Okay, we're going to try this one last time. I apologize profusely, especially to that one person that was like, I'm sick and tired of your nonsense. Goodbye. Anyways, hopefully this will hold and we won't have an issue. The topic. We're going to talk about why I'm still looking at news outlets and why Tim has never really done that in his life, apparently. At all. At all?
Never really cared to.
Never really cared to. We're going into that, and whether there's a right way or a wrong way in any of this, let's hope everything holds as it should. Well, hello and welcome back to thoughtraid. I'm frustrated. This is Mr. Giggles. And today... anyways, welcome to thoughtraid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon. This is Tim. And today we're having Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked, not talk... Oh, God. I'm so thrown off for doing this for the third time in a row.
So we're talking about news.
Thanks. News. And why I'm still in it, and you've never really touched news at all.
Yeah, so one of us is pretty buried in politics. The other's not. Guess who is who?
I wouldn't say I'm buried in politics. That's a bit of an extreme statement.
Okay, so a little bit of backstory. For the past couple of years, especially through COVID, I've gotten to know Brandon a lot better than pre-COVID.
Yes.
Post-COVID Brown seems a little different than pre-COVID Brown.
Yeah, you for the first 15, 16, 17, 18, 5 years of knowing me, had known me to be Mr. Excited, joyful, everything is going great, the Lord is wonderful. That's the side you've seen of me and from me for the first 5 years of knowing me. And then COVID happened, and we started thoughtraid, and then you began to see...
Oh boy, we got under each other's skin so much. So, yeah, COVID really... And this is true for a lot of people. COVID brought out sides of each other or one another that we never knew were actually there because... I don't know. I think for the first time in forever, people were in an actual life and death situation, which, if you step into the world of Christianity, it's really easy to be a Christian when it's easy to be a Christian. When your life is on the line, as it is in third world countries and places like China or North Korea, what are you going to do? And how do you reconcile all of that? And so as we talked, I started to see more and more differences between me and Brandon and how we thought about things.
Very much so. And the biggest thing about me is I like to try to avoid as much pain as I can avoid. I don't know anyone who really truly likes being in pain. I feel like
those are called masochists, Brandon.
Yes, and maybe they've just learned to enjoy pain, but I don't know if people are born masochists. I don't think. I don't know. I don't know. The people that I have known to truly be a masochist usually has some story that involves some sort of abuse they've been through in their past, and they're used to it. That's usually the people that I hear, or the people that are like super depressed, and that's the way they feel. Otherwise
they're trying to feel, yeah.
Yeah, so they, invoke a feeling through pain.
Yeah. Anyway, all that to say, COVID brought out sides of each other that we didn't really know were there, and we started to misunderstand how we tick and how we think things through, and specifically how we view macro level relationships. And when I say that, I'm talking about like country, us to China to us, whatever, just politics in general. We think very differently about them, and we have a different focus on them as well. So that's what we're talking about today.
Yes. So for me, I grew up, and the news was something that was ever present in my life. My parents, I remember there being not as much of a focus as a kid, but then again, I was a kid, so who's going to care about the news when you're 2 or 3 or 4? But as I got older, I began to notice what my parents, tendencies were, and they would watch, usually some kind of comedy program. Monk was pretty big at the time.
Monk, why does it sound familiar?
Yeah, the what's the word? What is the word? He is the detective that had OCD.
Oh,
Yes,
okay, yeah.
that's the one.
I remember that.
Yes. Hello, Dad. But you,
Mr. B.
Mr. Brown, my dad, after the third time going live, we're finally here. You would watch, you, Dad, and Mom, or it was more Mom than...
Transition.
Oh, yeah.
Can't see the chat, Brandon.
Can't see the... Okay, now we'll be able to see the chat. Chat will pop up in just a second, theoretically. Maybe it won't. Is it blocked?
No, I don't know, Brandon.
I don't see the chat, and I did hit the main talking button.
Oh, Noah.
Did he make oh, there it is. We're good.
Okay.
Anyways, so you, at least Mom specifically, she would watch different types of comedy. Everyone Loves Raymond, The Nanny. We'd watch that kind of stuff. But then my parents would also watch the news, like WXII 12 News, or they'd watch other stuff, and we would especially watch it as we got closer to elections. And this was stuff that was inputted into my life not all the time, but it would be regular.
You know, now thinking about it, Brandon, when I was younger, I did watch the news quite regularly, especially during the winter, and that would be to see if there were any school closings because of the snow. What did Austin say?
Hey, Zap.
It whizzed by and I can't see it.
I can see it from here. Let's see. He said, absolutely, you can't avoid the thing that causes pain itself, but you can avoid a painful relationship with a thing. I don't think that oh gosh, I need glasses. Hello. Focusing on tomorrow is ever good. An ever good idea. Focus on tomorrow. Focus on today, and tomorrow will present itself as it will.
Oh, what happened? Why you squint?
I'm sorry. I don't have...
Oh, Brandon.
My eyes are not my mom's eyes. My mom's eyes, she can see afar. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm more up close.
Okay. But yeah, like, I kind of agree with that. Hey, Zap. Hello, Heidi. You know, so you grew up and you were kind of in the spotlight when it came to being exposed to politics, and I was too. You know, I remember especially at my grandparents' house. My grandparents were, you know, my grandfather was a Quaker. Do you know what that is?
Kinda.
I have no clue what a Quaker is. I just know that he was a Quaker.
I don't have intimate knowledge of that, but yes, I know generally.
Yeah, so my grandparents were, you know, your typical white couple, business owners. So, of course, they supported Bush, as is the tradition here in North Carolina for white business owners. And so it was always like, oh, yo, Bush this, Bush that, or ooh, Clinton that, ooh, Clinton that, you know. And so I was predisposed to those thought patterns because, I mean, they were my caretakers, you know, my parents and my grandparents. And so I thought, okay, well, I guess that's kind of important, but I don't really care because it seems bigger than I can ever handle. And then, you know, I remember I was sitting in class 7th grade, actually, when 9/11 happened. I was in social studies or some kind of history class or something, and they turned on the TV and, you know, we saw it all.
Yeah.
Which is, it's really strange. Like, where were you when that happened? And where were you guys? I'm curious.
Well, I was in 4th grade, so I was in elementary school.
Did they show it all on TV?
Yes, they did.
Did they? To a 4th grader?
To a 4th... I mean, I wasn't the only one watching. There was 4th graders, second... It was elementary school. It was on every television that I remember, at least. You would see it, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. I'm an elementary school student. I'm just seeing that there's an airplane going into a tower, and I'm like... I'm usually used to seeing things happen outside of the country, so I'm still vaguely in that mindset. And then my parents come early because reasons I don't fully comprehend in that moment. School? They did, and I remember being super excited about that because, you know, I get to get
this is great.
I get to get out of school early. It's great. Yeah, that's what I remember. Yeah. So, you know, that's my experience. And then I remember... It was during the morning time. I remember that suddenly some friends were off limits that I had because they were Islamic, and that's about what I remember in a nutshell from everything that happened.
You know, I remember watching it, and I was so confused. I was like, I mean, this sucks, but what does this have to do with me? Like, I've always thought that stuff. Like, what does this have to do with me, really? What can I do? Like, why should I even be aware of this? And, you know, there is that trope that says if we don't adhere or study history, history repeats itself. So we have to avoid that. And that always, I don't know, that's never sat well with me, even though it makes sense. I digress. Anyways, so, you know, thinking about that, and then I got into high school, and then as you're in 11th and 12th grade, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to be an adult soon. And so all this stuff that I didn't have to think about before, I am soon going to have to consider. Like, who the heck do I vote for? How do I figure that out? I don't really want to, or like thinking about macro level job stuff. Like, okay, so am I just going to go to school to get an education and get a job and make money? Or am I going to do something of purpose? And what does that even mean? Do something? I was thinking this as a school student. I was like, what am I going to do of purpose? Okay, I guess I could be a president, or I don't know. Can I be like a scientist or something? I don't really know. And then I started thinking about the overall scope of everything in the news. And I was like, okay, I guess maybe I could focus on climate change if that actually exists, or maybe, I don't know, terrorism or drugs or sex trafficking or...
That's such a wide spread of things you were considering. My gosh.
Well, I mean, I was thinking, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life?
Right.
And I didn't want to just work a job and make money. I've always had something inside of me that was pulling me towards making a change with people, like positively.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to just waste my life. And that the scope of that as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, it was overwhelming because the world just seemed so big. I read through Solomon, through his chapter, and he's just talking about how he's got palaces and, wives and, conquered lands, and he's got all the wisdom in the world, all the stuff that I'm striving for right now, not wives. Disclaimer. I'm not striving for wives.
Multiple. Wait a minute, Tim.
He had it all, and he said it's all vanity and chasing after the wind. And I remember reading that as a non-Christian and thinking, oh, okay, well, if all this stuff that I think I want is vanity and chasing after the wind, why does it seem like most of the news is predisposed towards that? And if so, like, what do I pay attention to? What do I not? And why do I always feel bad when I watch the news? Do you ever think that?
I mean, I've always kind of felt anxious when watching the news. Not maybe anxious, but if you look at since we've been looking at emotional wheels now for the past month.
Yeah, we're trying to get in touch with our feelings.
Feeling bad is not in the same scope of emotions as feeling anxious. Anxious is more in the fear category, and bad is in a different set of emotions.
Yeah, well, let me touch on this real quick before we move on. Heidi said, I was in New York and watched when the second airplane... Oh, you were in New York when that happened. Okay. I remember thinking we were possibly being attacked by another country. Lauren was napping.
So, yeah. And I know that we had, like, one of my parents' friends that they had from a church they were a part of when they were still living in New York was there running away when that happened. So yeah, that was a crazy period of time. But I don't know, for me, when I saw the news, I oftentimes feel anxious because here I see all these bad things happening to my country and it going down a direction that's going to end in my persecution. Is kind of every time I open the news, this is just what I'm preparing for. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of stuck, while as you've apparently been able to avoid the news, I have not, because for me, I mentioned this before the stream kaput last time, I like to avoid pain if I can help it entirely. If it was up to me, I would try to avoid most forms of pain. So for me, what?
I just remember the time. Can I pick on you for a second?
Okay.
I love you, Brandon. We were on a hike one time with a bunch of people, and it was kind of warm outside. And like a quarter of the way through, it's like sweating. He's like, I think my body's telling me to go back inside. I don't know. I just think about that whenever you talk about avoid.
And if there comes a point, I don't want to keep pushing through the pain. I want more pain in my life, Tim. I am the anti-masochist.
Oh, that should be a superhero.
Anti-masochist.
I guess that's kind of what most superheroes are.
Anti-masochists. There you go. Yeah, that's what I am. Anti-masochist. But no, I don't like, there's some pains I know this is a necessary part of living. No pain, no gain when it comes to, having a healthier body. I get that. And now I also understand the need for going through emotional pain in order to get to emotional health. So I understand that as well. However, I tried to reduce it in any other way possible, and the news has been the way of which I've kind of, tried to prepare for future pain. Mm-hmm. So, like, I know that there is a...
Are you talking about just, like, anticipate what's coming?
Right.
Okay.
I know that there is a good in, like, living a life that's moral and, gonna, be healthy so that way you don't create problems for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, that's good.
I mean, yeah, being preemptive about things makes sense.
Right. Making sure that you're eating properly, making sure that you're working through your problems, making sure that you're forgiving people, all that stuff. There's good in that. But then there's that seemingly moral gray place, at least for me, of where I see what society's doing, and I'm like, should I be preparing for tomorrow? I'm gonna come to work, and they're gonna take me to jail because now Christianity's under fire.
How do you prepare for that?
I don't know.
I mean, okay, so the Bible does say people perish for the lack of knowledge, but
right?
At the very start of the entire story, it says, "Man ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil."
Yeah, and that kind of screwed up everything for us for millennia. So there's that.
Yeah, like you made the comment the other day, because we talk about this kind of frequently. And you made the comment that you can't avoid it because you go on Facebook, you go on social media, and it's there. And I'm like, why don't I experience that too? Like I remember I was with somebody, we talk about celebrity crushes all the time. We're like, who's your celebrity crush? And you have to pick a man and a woman just for whatever sake. And somebody said the words Sandra Bullock. And ever since then, I've been getting Sandra Bullock ads on Facebook. It's like, Sandra Bullock, what are you doing here? I don't really care about you. But it's like, why did it pick up on that, But it's like, you said that you can't escape it. And it's like, I have to go searching for it if I want it. It's not really as readily available for me, I guess, like, because I've curated my social media that way.
Yeah, I mean, I've actively turned off a lot of the abilities of Facebook and Google to listen to me. Like, I've turned off, like, there's privacy settings you can go through. And since then, I've had less targeted ads, but still not completely untargeted ads. I hate it. That's one of the things I don't like about social media nowadays, is they just take too much information from you. But that's another story entirely. And I don't know, maybe because of the fact of my conservative upbringing, because of my only child upbringing, and all these different factors, I still will have news feed. Now, granted, I have followed the Daily Wire, and so that's a news outlet. So I
don't
do
even know what that is.
That's a conservative news. You've heard of Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, so... Wow. The immediate response.
I mean, okay, so I like Shapiro just for the spectacle of Ben Shapiro. I don't really know if I agree with a lot of the stuff that he does. It's just his posture is a huge turn off to me.
There's a lot of things I don't agree with that he does, but I agree with him more than I agree with other people. So I've kept his stuff. But that being said, I don't know. Now I'm like considering maybe I should just unfollow that as well, because that's another way.
I think he's fun to listen to, just for the entertainment value.
That's just another way, though, that news keeps ending up on my feed. So then if I escape the Daily Wire, then I fall into Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson is also very intertwined with whatever news is going on.
Have you seen what he's been saying about his diet? He's like, I eat beef and I eat meat. That's all I do. Just beef and meat. And he's championing that. I mean...
He's on a keto diet, I guess.
He's on a cuckoo diet. I don't know, man. Like, how do you survive off of beef and meat?
I don't know. I can't just have exclusively meat, no.
Yeah.
I do love meat, but not to that degree.
I just think it's so interesting. So, like Heidi just said, I sometimes feel that the news is very biased. I scan headlines to see what's going on, so I'm informed, but I take nothing... written as law. And it's like, I see this a lot in Christian culture. We just like, as you like to use the term, glom. We glom onto figureheads. Like we saw this a lot with Trump. Whether you voted for him or not, whether you like him or not, it's not what I'm saying right now, but there's a lot of people who just followed Trump blindly just because they thought, oh, he's the next savior or something, and there was that whole mentality behind it. And people do the same thing with less prolific figures like Todd White or Dan Mohler. And then there was all this stuff, and I don't know if you guys are watching this, if you're Christians or not, but in the Christian world, Bethel is a big thing out in California. The big young adult music movement. A few of them stepped away from Christian faith, and everybody was like, "Oh no, what's wrong with Christianity? They're freaking humans, But like, because one person moves, a nation trembles, And that whole concept is why I have an issue with the news media, And it's like, why am I going to panic just because one person or a small conglomerate of people are telling me this is what you need to hear? And most of the time it doesn't provide hope. It doesn't provide me with solutions. It's very biased towards here's what's going wrong.
Yeah. Like and the problem that we have in today is back when you and mom, because I know you and dad, you and mom are watching at this moment. When you growing up, you didn't have social media to have every single thing going wrong in front of you all the time to share with that. It was still happening. There was still bad things happening, but the access to how many bad things were happening per day was not as numerous.
God, that was so nice. I remember not having social media and of getting a phone call or having to call somebody and it's like, yeah, can I talk to Amy? 1 second, young. You know that you couldn't text, and there was no DMing or anything. I really miss that ignorance back in the day.
You miss what being anxious that you have to call someone without texting them.
No, I just miss the lack of connectedness and the lack of, I miss the lack of constant connectedness and the immediate gratification of everything. Because back then you actually had to work for it. Dude, I remember when I was in elementary school, I don't know if you ever had these, but the Encyclopedia Britannica, do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Most of you, if you're under 30 years of age, you don't know what that is. But back then, the encyclopedia was how you did all of your schoolwork. You'd go to either the library or you'd come on, if you were privileged, you had one. And now it's like, oh, well, like there was an episode of Salute Your Shorts. Do you know what that is?
No, I do not.
It was a Nickelodeon thing. But there was this radio DJ and they were doing trivia and he was asking questions like, what color is a giraffe's tongue? And nobody knew because they didn't have internet back then. So they just had to poll the people around them for basic knowledge. And now you can't do stuff like that because everybody's got access to whatever's out there. And that's scary. And I don't know, we just have so many people that are so knowledgeable that nobody wants to listen.
Well, people's knowledge has gone up, but not their wisdom. Like, I feel like that's a big thing that happens too. Like, we have access to all the knowledge of whatever exists on the internet, but not necessarily what to trust and not trust. And that's another layer. That's another layer. Like, I saw recently, like this poll of like people's trust of certain forms of media, that has the news, newspapers, television, whatever. And it's definitely gone down. Like, people don't really trust like they used to what's going on in news. But they're still getting it nonetheless. They're getting it from different sources. So it's like we're in a day and age where knowledge is so easily accessible, but we don't know what news and what information we're receiving is actually true.
Oh, how do you reconcile that? Because you said something that I think is super wise a second ago. You said that people have knowledge, but they don't have wisdom. And so how do you think people operate in a place where they develop the wisdom, or how do you think people operate when they come into contact with all the knowledge of news media, whether it's Fox or CNN or whatever?
My brain, I'm sorry, as you're asking that question, I saw some things popping up in chat and my brain floated off in a direction. One more time, I'm sorry.
No, sure.
The question you asked.
I wasn't listening.
Oh my God, you just asked a question.
Okay. Oh, right. Oh, jeez. Sorry, I was reading chat.
See? Speaking of over-connectivity.
So what's the difference between knowledge and wisdom when it comes to current news? Like, how do you know somebody's operating in wisdom instead of just regurgitating the knowledge that they've read at whatever social media outlet?
The only thing that I can know to answer that, as I don't have like a big here, I'm a scientific person who has I don't have that.
Like for me, for instance, Brandon, do you think I'm wise or do you think I'm knowledgeable?
I do think you're wise. Yes, I do think you're wise. You would not be a close friend of mine if I did not think that.
Yeah.
So yes, I do think you're wise, and I do think you're knowledgeable, but I think you have like your specific focuses. I think you develop wisdom by just having a honest perspective on what reality is. Like, wisdom is living life with your eyes open of what's happening, the good and the bad. Because I feel like lack of wisdom is like there are things happening, but you have this knowledge and you are determined that this is how life is supposed to be, but you're not open to seeing that maybe it goes in different directions. So you have your favorite knowledge, which could be or could not be correct. You don't know. You haven't tested, you haven't seen how reality unfolds. So I think having that like openness, and I hope I'm wording this correctly. I'm hoping is this making sense what I'm saying? Okay. Yeah, having that wisdom is allowing yourself to go through reality as it is presented to you without forcing it down some sort of filter to see how it plays out, to then know that when knowledge comes your way, does this actually fit in with the reality that you've seen? So, like, there has been some things that have floated up in news that are like, oh, wow, that could actually be the case, but there is no basis for it in reality. It's not replicating itself. It's like a experiment done in a lab. It happened in the lab, but you go outside the lab, it's not happening anywhere else. So it's not. That's where I feel like that's where the wisdom comes from is by experiencing life humbly. And just seeing what it looks like, whether it's good or whether it's bad. Not getting jaded, but not being blinded either.
Yeah, so I think you're super wise too. I mean, that's why you're one of my close friends. Like, the way you think about things is from you actually put things through a really good filter. You're like, okay, well, what does God think about this? Like, here's how I think about this, but God, what do you think? Like, you model that in one of the best ways I know of anybody in my life, which is really cool. But then you also have moments where it's like you go down the spiral and then it's almost like those options are no longer considered of, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it leaves me thinking, okay, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I do need to pay more attention to this, because maybe there is cause to worry, because I think I don't worry enough about certain things.
But the Bible says to be anxious for nothing and to fear not. So to be fair, the fact that I'm worrying and freaking out about something could be a sign that I'm off. Now, granted, and I don't think it's suggesting that don't feel fear or feel anxiety. It's just that don't be led by that, I think, is more specifically. And I agree with what you're saying, Mom, that when wisdom comes from the Word of God. And I find that the Word of God is just full of wisdom for sure, because it's written as it's written. There's no sugarcoating in the Bible that I can see. So it just displays things as this is what's happened. Here's how things works, and there doesn't seem to be anything inserted in there that's just, this is what I believe, and this is how reality is, and you should do things this specific way. It's just, here's how it is, here's how it works, do with it what you will. That's what I see, and that's why I trust the Bible as the source of wisdom. But then I see what the Bible says replicating itself in reality around me, so that's why I know the Word of God is truth and wisdom. But that's on a specific tangent. And I see Dad saying something about Quakers helped free many slaves when they escaped from the South, and when they worshiped, the place would shake. Yeah. So they got that because their worship would sometimes, I guess, the foundations would literally shake.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's because they were dancing around or that just it was a supernatural shaking that was happening. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's get back to the main thing today. So the title of today's stream is Why Brandon Watches the News and Tim Doesn't. So I want to say I honestly don't watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because I'm lazy.
Okay.
And partially because I just think, is this hindering my ability to be present? Because, growing up, I did see so much of my grandparents getting stuck in CNN. All their conversations are focused on what may happen. This bad thing is going to happen, so we need to vote for this person. Which, I guess kind of makes sense. But when 90% of their thought life is wrapped up in elections and politics and everything, and there's so much going on in their personal life, like getting a little bit more naked than I'd like to about this. When I was that age, I remember thinking, why are you guys so focused on what's going on here? But there's a lot going on with me that you're not asking about, And that really hurt. It really hurt that there was so much macro level focus when the micro level focus was just like how in the Bible it says that if you serve the homeless and the poor, then you have served me. This is Jesus speaking.
I'm talking about what true religion is, what I think the scripture verse was talking about.
Yeah.
Serving the homeless and the widow.
Yeah, serving the people that there are present immediate needs right in front of you instead of focusing on tomorrow and, building up storehouses for yourselves and all that. And so seeing all that really got to me. It's like if I was looking around, looking at all the issues that they could never address, that they could never affect, unless they became some kind of like politician or somebody that's a big shaker in the world, like not Uma Thurman. Who am I thinking? Greta Thunberg or whoever's an activist, right? Like, in order to make that type of impact on the world, you have to sell out completely, right? But they weren't selling out; they were only getting swept up in the current of it, and in doing so, the focus that could be godly, righteous focus if they had done something with it. Was taken away from what was right in front of them. Like, I really needed help back then, right? If they profess to be Christians, like, I really wish they would had talked to me more about a relationship with God instead of the religion of being Baptist. Like, be a Baptist or you're going to hell. Great. As a sixth grader who's trying to figure out puberty and everything, that's the last thing I need to hear. I need compassion. I need to be seen, right? And because they were so focused on the macro level stuff, it's like, well, now I have repressed feelings. It's difficult to let people help me because I learned to fend for myself. And so, from my own background, seeing that play out, how people were so focused on everything but what was in front of them, I don't know, I just get really annoyed when I see people doing that. It's like, it's not doing anything for your ministry, for you, or the people around you. And it's good to have awareness of it. Because, you could give money to people who can go and do things, or you can give encouragement and support to people who can go and do things. But if you're not going and doing things yourself, like, we're all called to do something, right? Not just sit around and read tabloids and politics and watch CNN. It just pisses me off.
I think I'm feeling like this is kind of connecting in my head with just something I was doing on my way here. I was telling you, Dad, that I was watching that video that you shared about Oliver Cromwell, and I was just kind of researching up about who might potentially be one of our relatives. We're not 100% certain, but it's likely that I'm related to Oliver Cromwell. And just kind of listening to him, he was a man who grew up. The first king that was over England when he was young was decent. The second king was constantly trying to spearhead what he wanted to have happen. Mm-hmm. And back in those days, apparently, they would weaponize the Catholic religion as a way to keep people away. Like they weaponized the Catholic religion as this person is a bad person because they're Catholic. Apparently in England in the 1600s, that was a weapon back then. And so there was a bigger...
that's what happened in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You remember, what was her name? Esmeralda? Because she wasn't Catholic, she was a piece.
Interesting. So I didn't but in England specifically, apparently, so you had like Catholicism, because the Catholics, what had happened is there was this rumor that spread that someone, a part of Catholicism, tried to plant a bunch of explosives underneath the house of one of the kings and kill them or something of that nature. And so then that became immediately like, all Catholics are bad. Mm-hmm. And since there was a big push for Protestantism.
I got you, Brandon.
Thanks, I appreciate it, Tim. That just set England on fire. And so Oliver Cromwell grew up with that, and then the second king kept using this as a weapon to spearhead his agenda, and he would start parliaments and dismantle parliaments, and start them again and dismantle them again. Mm-hmm. And so eventually, years later, Oliver Cromwell gets to this position where he has some weight, he has some authority, some power. And he wasn't an abolitionist when it came to the king or anything at the time, but because of the pig-headedness of King Henry, I want to say, was it King Henry? I forget exactly the king at that time. I think it was King Henry, or King Charles, something like that. Either way, maybe it was Charles. Let me know, Dad. You might be more on top of this if it was King Henry or Charles at the time, so that way I don't get the history wrong. Either way, eventually Oliver Cromwell got to a place where he gained leadership of England.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up getting that king killed, and then he ended up being like a great military tactician that also ended the war for a period of time between England and the Irishmen.
Mm-hmm.
And he got swept up in the constant politics of England. And by the end of that time, he ended up dying as a depressed man. And everything that he had tried to establish during his brief reign was, according to this historian, was completely erased after 2 years. Why what?
Why did that happen?
Because people were who they were. Charles II. Okay, thank you. People were who they were. They wanted what they wanted. Mm-hmm. They're going to keep doing it regardless of whatever Oliver Cromwell wanted to do. He tried to establish, when he became leader, he tried to establish a parliament that had righteous people in it. Mm-hmm. And he tried to get rid of all the constant weird politics that England had at the time and failed.
I mean, that happened multiple times in biblical history too.
Exactly.
I mean, Samuel tried to do that. He was like, God wants to be your king, but I mean, if you
but
want a
people
king,
desperately wanted a king, and they're going to have what they wanted.
Before that, Moses was like, "Hey guys, these can't. No, we want this idol."
Right, and so history is wrought with constant moral decay of just people wanting what they want. They want to go back to it, and I'm feeling in this moment, this should be something for me to think about whenever I'm tempted to go too deep into news, because no matter how much of what's going on, I can't control it. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to continue to happen long after I'm dead until the Lord returns. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I keep going to news because I hope that by going to the news, I would be able to know what's going to happen ahead of schedule, prepare myself, and be less in pain when the time comes. But that's its own form of trying to control things that are, once again, out of my control. God has prepared me for things. He's told me as of the end of last year to start saving money, and I have. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing that consistently. So I have evidence in my life that God does prepare me for things. I don't know what I'm being prepared for yet. I just know I need to start saving, so I have been. Mm-hmm. So
maybe you're saving so you can buy me something really nice.
Maybe so. Maybe I'm saving for my future wife. Who knows? It could be that too.
Or to buy me something really nice. But, just thinking about that, the Bible, like the whole purpose of the Bible, it serves two things. It serves to model discipleship and to teach us about God's character, because it's like when you're dating somebody, you're trying to get to know them, you're just trying to figure out what their character is. That's all the Bible is. Sure, it's a history book, but it's a history book of who this person is, Jesus, and why he is the way that he is, right? And then it talks about discipleship. And if you think about Jesus as the king, like genie from Latin, phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. That's what he chose, right? He chose to limit himself, right? So why was he born into a place that was not politics? Why was he born into a place to be a woodworker?
Well, I don't know if the genie actually wanted to be confined to a lamp, but,
Brandon, it's a metaphor.
Okay. Get your metaphors right, Tim.
But it's like he wasn't born into politics. He was born into less than politics, and he didn't say take over governments. He didn't say. And he didn't even model this. He didn't say, overthrow people. He said, go and be fishers of men, right? And if you think about the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, that story really gets me. Braveheart with Mel Gibson, that story really gets me. Jesus and his disciple, that story really gets me. And it gets me because they made great change, not through, and I mean, that's subjective because... or arguable, because in Braveheart they did try to overthrow the government. Irrelevant.
Okay.
But the cool thing about that was they focused on relationships and discipleship and teaching people to... Chelsea Cordell said something really interesting to me recently. She went to this G4 conference thing for Christian leaders. She said that if we all take 1 year to disciple one person, and each person that gets disciples one person, just spends a whole year with one person, teaching them sanctification and righteousness and good and how to steward what's present in their life well, and model that through example. If they did that with one person, just doing that one person a year, every year of your life. So I'm 37. If I have discipled 37 people throughout the course of my life, in 30 years, the entire world would be discipled. Right? Now, think about that conversely. Let's think that, okay, I'm going to champion this and I'm going to become, I don't know, so-and-so politician, and I'm going to set these laws into place that people may or may not agree with. I'm just going to create law. The Bible is clear about that too. The law is not made for the righteous, but for the unrighteous, right? And there's a difference between legislation and conviction. Legislation basically says if you do this, there is a consequence. Conviction says, hey, this is going to hurt you, so don't do this. So let me lead you from here to there, right? And so just thinking about news on a macro level, all it is justification for legislation. And I mean, that's how Roe versus Wade was. That's how the war on terrorism was. It was all trying to get certain bills and laws passed based on a certain platform, instead of taking people on a personal level and saying, okay, let's help you understand right from wrong and why.
Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know, man, just the idea of watching the news, it just seems like a moot point to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't say that I've gotten to a place where I'm ready to throw out news entirely, but each year it seems like that's better for me to do. I guess there's like a part of me that's scared to kind of let go of the news, because it's the part of me that wants to avoid future pain, and also to avoid being dumb or something, which is his own form of future pain, so there's that's there, but I can't in this moment, and I've been in this similar moment in November of last year, I can't necessarily see how having news has greatly benefited me. Like, I don't know. It's made me aware of things. So I can say that at the very least, whenever I take something into consideration, I have years of news that I've watched, and I'm not making I'm not making a decision completely blind about it, because I've seen different things. But I also know and recognize that anything that I receive from any news outlet is always going to be filtered through that one particular person that wrote the article, or through the person that's talking about it. So I really don't know. That's why I've kind of come to the place last year or so where I realized all knowledge is paper thin and ear to ear. Like, most knowledge is just, very few people have actually tested it out with their hands to know exactly how something works. And even if they did, they only can scratch the surface of how it actually works, because we don't know what's on the inside of someone's mind, and we don't know the depths of the thing we're working with. So we can only go so far with that, and then build off of all these surface layer things, which are, again, paper thin, paper thin, paper thin, which has given me the boldness that when someone comes at me hard and says, this is exactly the way things are, I'm like, no, you don't know that. You think you know that, but you cannot say that with the level of aggressiveness you're coming at me with.
So before we started the stream, we had one of those moments on my couch. We're talking about China, remember?
Yes.
And what were we saying? It was something like, China's doing this, and it's going to lead to World War III or something like that. And I was like, well, how do you know that? Just what is it? Cognitive therapy questions. Okay, well, how do you know that's true?
Yeah, I don't entirely know.
Right. But you were positioning it, and granted, you don't always do this, but in that, this is one of the sensitive things, just because you're worried about it, which makes a lot of sense. It's really easy to get worried about freaking World War III, but it's like, okay, so the way you feel makes sense, and I'd probably feel the same too if it was true. But how do you know it's true? And if it's not true, then why are you so emotionally invested in the potential? I'll use your term, the potentiality of it being true.
Yeah, future pain.
Yeah. Zach said, you guys are doing so much good. Keep going. Thanks for always talking about these great issues. Love you. Oh, we love you, Zach.
Yeah. Everything has been linked to future pain.
Yeah.
And when it comes to me and getting into news, because it's like, if I can avoid the pain, I want to avoid the pain.
Like, I just don't get it, man, because like, you can't do anything about World War III personally. And so it's like, that's just putting you in more pain by being aware of it.
Yeah, it's taking away my current non-pain and replacing with what could be pain but may not be pain, but we don't know because we're not there.
And then you freak out because you know you can't do anything about it.
So but you know what? On the bright side, Tim,
what's the bright side, bro?
I didn't get to this until November last year. Now I'm getting into it August this year. I've pulled it back by a couple of months. I'm recognizing it sooner.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I guess I'm at a juncture once again where it's probably good for me to take a step back from the news of any sort, conservative and or otherwise, because it's just, I can't control what's happening around me, but I can help someone that's near me, and I can reach out to you guys like we're doing now and share my process with you, and hopefully it will help you too. I can do that. So that's what I'm doing to help. And the Bible tells us, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, make your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. And I think Jesus specifically talked about don't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. You know? So the war in China, World War III, is worrying about itself right now. I don't have to be the one worrying about it.
Yeah. You know, I mean, so there is wisdom in being aware of things, you know, just knowing what's going on, because the Bible also says, mourn with those who are mourning and rejoice with those who are rejoicing. And so just to be completely ignorant of things to the point of not being able to relate and understand other people, I think that's really important. Being ignorant. Okay, so I lost track of what I just said. Basically, you just have to have some awareness so that you can relate.
Right.
And so I don't watch the news. I probably should watch it more just to be more aware, because I get all my news from whatever memes just happen. Why are people joking about this? What happened with Will Smith? I go searching it.
Well, you could get the news from the person that you're trying to console to understand the situation better.
Yeah, but at the same time, if somebody's messed up about some news, they generally have a very biased opinion of that news.
Fair.
I don't know. I think it's really cool that I have the Holy Spirit. You know.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't want to give counsel, if you consider this giving counsel, to just avoid all news. I think it is important to at least know what's up.
Yeah. And I sometimes I get stuck in that, and I go deeper than I need to. So, yeah, I'm working on it. But I would like to recommend that if it's getting you to a place where you're anxious, it's good to re-examine it. Whether that means walking away from it, whether that means limiting it, whether that means cutting it out entirely. Pay attention to how you're feeling regarding it, because God is not going to be in the anxiety. He's going to try to get you out of the anxiety.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I don't remember who it was. So if this was you, it's you. We were talking about something, like being aware of something to the point of freaking out. And I was like, well, you know, the Bible does say if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. So it's good to worry about something to a point, but if you worry about something to a point where it's causing you to sin, which is engage in fear and anxiety, pluck it out. Yeah. Now, don't literally pluck your eyes out. That's not what that's about. But, you know, there's another verse that says it's not what goes in that defiles man, it's what comes out. So if, you know, people have different capacities of things. You know, I have a very significant capacity to ask deep questions and draw people out in their lives. I have very little capacity for superficial conversation. And I'm not saying superficial conversation is bad. It's just when I get too much of that, what starts coming out of me is judgment, because I get really frustrated with people who focus on superficial things a lot, and I just get irritated and I get angry. So if that's the case, I just have to, you know, cut through and say, hey, can we talk about something else, or just remove myself from that relationship, because that's not my ministry, you know? And so if you get to a point where what's going into you is starting to manifest and things coming out of you that are not healthy, pluck it out.
Yeah. This is a seed that needs to be uprooted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. And that is just going into further exclamation of Quaker, the process of worship where their violent tremblings and quakings predominate in news. Okay, cool.
It's weird because my grandfather was a Quaker. I never once heard him worship.
That's interesting. Maybe he was just by name, not by actual like.
He had a little name tag.
Yeah, Quaker. He was more of an oat.
He was definitely an oat.
Quaker oats. Anyways, well, I want to thank you guys for watching. If you've enjoyed this stream, make sure to like it and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell notification button so you know when we go live again. We will be going live again this Friday, specifically me and Dan, and we'll probably have some sort of topic while we play a chill game like Raft or Minecraft, but you'll definitely want to be there for that because it's always fun, and we always like talking to people that join. And I want to say thank you to all of you guys who have joined us in today's stream and chatting with us. I love watching what you're saying in the background and just kind of reading it and, you know, sometimes responding when I can, or Tim catches the others. So thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Thank you, Zap. Thank you, God,
Awesome.
Zach. I got Zap, and then it prevented me from saying Zach. And what was Austin? Yes. Thank you all for coming in and chatting with us today. I'm very grateful. But with that said, we broadcast every week on Monday, Friday, and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll be live again this Friday. You don't want to miss it. We want you to be there. You have a good day.
I can see far away from where I've been. He says I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.